If the soil is hard, the spring is compressed until the cutting edge of the tube is forced above the bottom of the cutter barrel. As the barrel rotates, it cuts an annular ring, leaving a cylinder of soil over which the sample tube slides. The tube thus protects the sample against erosion by the circulating fluid. In this manner, the pitcher sampler adapts itself to the stiffness of the soil. From the descriptions of these sampling methods, it is clear that all samples experience disturbance. This graph shows the results of 3 consolidation tests on the same heavily over-consolidated clay. 1 block sample, 1 borehole sample, and a remolded sample. Also shown on this figure is the ideal in situ curve, or zero disturbance curve, reconstructed using Schmertmann's procedure to correct for sample disturbance effects. As shown by this typical set of data, increasing levels of sample disturbance make it progressively more difficult to evaluate the in situ compressibility of clayey soils. This graph illustrates the stress-strain behavior of 2 samples of the same very stiff clay from Oakland, California. One obtained using a pitcher sampler, and the other obtained using a modified California split-spoon sampler. The severe disturbance caused by the split-spoon sampler is illustrated by the dramatically distorted and softened stress-strain behavior, as compared to the more reasonable behavior for the pitcher sample. More importantly, it must be realized that the pitcher sample is also disturbed, and its stiffness is also likely to be considerably less than the in situ stiffness. Disturbance to soil samples does not just occur during the sampling process. Additional disturbance occurs because of the unavoidable changes in soil confining stress. During transportation of the samples from the field to the lab, or during storage at the lab, especially if significant moisture content changes, temperature changes, or tube corrosion occurs. During extrusion of the samples from the tubes prior to testing, and during handling and mounting for testing. Generally, the better the quality of the sample, the more expensive and time-consuming its recovery is likely to be. For some purposes, such as designing the foundation of a light structure on stiff clay, the expense of obtaining high-quality samples may not be justified. On the other hand, when the compressibility or shearing strength of soft clay is needed to evaluate the settlement or stability of a critical embankment or structure, even the best samples may barely be adequate. Consequently, there is a need to establish a quantitative measure of the quality of samples, especially for soft clays and silts. This video has presented a basic introduction to some of the common drilling and sampling procedures used in geotechnical practice. There are many other methods that can be used for site characterization and soil sampling, including some that are considerably more advanced than the ones shown in this video. Regardless of the method, it is important that the geotechnical engineer be familiar with the tools and procedures that are being used in the field, understand how these tools and procedures can affect the results of lab and in situ tests, and appreciate the inherent uncertainties that are involved in characterizing subsurface conditions. Primary funding for this educational research project was provided by the National Science Foundation. Additional funding was provided by the Teaching Resources Center at the University of California, Davis. Tabor Consultants performed most of the drilling shown in this video. A special thanks is extended to Andy Tabor for their cooperation and support. CJ Supply graciously provided the drilling and sampling tools shown in this video. Special thanks to Bud and Alan Brodus for their cooperation and input. Valuable comments and suggestions were provided by Andy Tabor, Leslie Harder, and Michael Reamer. The assistance of Bill Sluice is also greatly appreciated. Narration by Christopher Peak and dialogue recording by Ned Jacobson.